We have some crew.
You want to ask us questions? Go for it.
Okay.
Fastest speed.
Including tide, our fastest speed was probably about 12 knots near Rathlin Island, coming down the coast of Belfast.
Something like that.
And pretty fast in the Bristol Channel too.
No surfing this time.
Shallowest water.
The east coast was pretty shallow. We chose not to go over the shallowest bit when we were coming into Harwich and Ipswich, didn't we?
We did, although that channel, the Medusa Channel coming in, is fairly shallow. So we didn't go all the way around. We did come across
Of course,
a channel there.
It was a little bit shallow when we went aground.
Yes, well, let's not talk about that.
I put the boat very briefly, gently, on the mud, just as we were coming into the marina at Hull.
Best wash facilities.
Oh, best wash facilities. I think that was North Shields, so on the Tyne.
Yeah, I agree.
Worst wash facilities.
Bristol Town Quay.
I'm afraid Bristol gets
I'm
the worst in the country.
And it wasn't very nice.
There.
Most unusual shower.
We know where that was.
Canna.
West of Scotland, one of the small isles.
We have to walk half a mile and then you get to
a farmyard.
it's next to the cheese making house.
And there's a cheese making house, and there's a little museum, and there's a shed. You put your £2 in and you have a very nice shower. And then you dry your towel on the wall outside looking at the sea.
Earliest start.
Depart 4 a.m, so alarms on at 3:30, departure at 4 from Oxwich Bay in South Wales.
Scariest moment.
Weren't any particularly scary moments. Scariest thing is the pot boys, I think. That's the greatest danger.
Yes.
Because they're everywhere.
And they're not marked very well.
Yeah, so you have to avoid the lobster pot boys the whole time. Keep concentrating.
And it's particularly difficult in the dark when you can't actually see them. But we didn't run into any of them.
Most inaccessible anchorage.
So it's on the south side of Loch Nevis, on the Moray Peninsula near Mallaig. Fantastic tiny anchorage.
And Jonathan discovered it by looking at some amazing charts that have been published called Antares charts, and we neared it and it didn't look like an anchorage at all, it just looked like a cliff, and then there was suddenly a tiny little inlet with a tiny little beach, and we anchored between two rock faces.
Longest passage.
From Lowestoft to Hull overnight across the Wash, and we'd actually done about a 6 or 7 hour sail to get to Lowestoft. We had a break, we set off at 10 o'clock or thereabouts in the night and the fog, and we arrived in Hull at about 4 p.m. the following day.
Scariest wildlife.
The Arctic skua, which is probably the meanest seagull you can ever meet.
You see it chasing other birds.
Watch out if you're a rabbit, watch out if you're a small child.
Friendliest wildlife.
One or two of them are friendly. There was a baby seal on the island of Lundy. There he was, poked his head up curiously and had a little chat with us.
Yeah. And we saw a sea otter just off Kerrera swimming around us. That was lovely.
Yeah.
I think that's...
Dolphin location.
Oh, that's got to be Canna. Sort of about 6 o'clock in the evening, a whole pod of dolphins arrived and played round the boat and leapt.
And the most special meal.
Ooh, we had some various special meals. Doon Bay on the Knoydart Peninsula. Super remote spot. There's a little lodge where people go for walking holidays, and there are just 4 tables, and visiting yachtsmen can book a meal with them. So we stayed on their mooring and had dinner at Doon Bay. Wonderful.
Best local music.
Well,
Quite a lot of good local music. There was a solitary piper at Stromness, which was wonderful until we realised it was probably laid on for the tourists on the cruise boat as the cruise boat left.
Most high-tech vessel.
I think the most surprising and high-tech one was a drone boat that we saw in Peterhead, and that's a boat that is actually controlled from an office in Northern Ireland, and it does maritime surveys in all sorts of different locations, so it's a pretty new thing. By coincidence, we saw it again, in fact, just off Doon Bay, which is pretty weird, isn't it? Because that's a remote place.
on the other side of the country,
Yep.
on the west coast.
What was our next question? Weirdest coincidence.
That was pretty weird
was a weird
coincidence, seeing the same boat
coincidence.
twice.
Nicest person met.
We've met lots of nice people, but the person that stands out is the
engineer and coxswain of
coxswain.
the Wick lifeboat, who was absolutely charming and a wonderful host for our few days in Wick. He was so welcoming. Never seen that before. Look at that. Look at that.
You ready?
Right, we're ready. We're ready.
Have a taste of that. See what you think.
Whoa. Right, we'll give you a verdict on that.
Thank you very much. Friendliest harbour master.
Now that's got to be the very nice harbour master in the pink jumper at White Hills on the south coast of the Moray Firth, and every boat that comes in he takes photographs. He sits on the harbour wall and takes photographs as you come in, and when you arrive and tie up he hands you his camera disc and you can download the photographs of yourself. He was very friendly.
He was, yeah.
And he had a lovely pink jumper.
Funniest moment.
We ought to be answering in a way that is joking about ourselves.
But actually the funniest moment was seeing a member of our crew, who shall be nameless, skinny dipping on the west coast of Scotland and then scarpering along the beach in not very much to dry off in
was
the
funny,
very
was it?
cold sunshine.
Biggest mistake?
Well, I think not taking local advice as we left Hull, leaving at a slightly different time, and as a result missing the tidal gate at Flamborough Head. However, as we went round Flamborough Head, it meant that we were there when called upon by the Coast Guard to get out our binoculars and look for a kayaker that was lost somewhere there.
We didn't find him, but we did look.
We didn't.
Youngest crew member.
Well, that'll be Sam Hall.
We've already mentioned stripping off, but this is a question about the least clothes worn for sailing.
Well, the least clothes probably at least involve
How many layers?
3 layers. We haven't sailed in shorts once.
We didn't take off our thermals until July, I think.
Occasionally I took my jacket off.
Most spectacular moment.
Oh, wow. Well, I think coming round Cape Wrath was utterly spectacular.
Evening sunshine.
In evening sunshine, in a good stiff breeze, sailing fast. And the Cape is amazing. High cliffs with a lighthouse perched on top. It was beyond what I'd anticipated.
Most beautiful place.
That's got to be the island of Rona. You go in through kind of quite a narrow, windy entrance and you come into a still, peaceful harbour with beautiful scenery, island scenery.
There have
all
been
round.
lots of beautiful places there, haven't there?
Yeah, that's the most beautiful though.